Well, how about this, when I get to the ordinance, presenting that to council data to the council office for 60 days?
They request a hearing.
Okay, then I'll just.
Good evening, welcome to Athens City Council. Let's come to order. Tonight is Monday, June 5th, 2006. It's on or about 7:30 p.m. We do have a quorum with 6 members present. Disposition of minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of the regular session?
I move we accept the minutes of the regular session of May 15th, 2006.
Second.
Other comments? All those in favor of accepting the minutes as presented?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes have been accepted. Communications. Yes.
Mr.
Jen,
President,
go
I move that we accept the April financial reports that the auditor has placed in the council office.
Second.
Second, yes.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to accept the financial reports.
For
presented-
April.
For April, thank you. Presented by the city auditor. There are further discussions. All those in favor of accepting the reports?
Aye.
Opposed? The reports have been accepted. I'm in receipt of a couple of things. Just handed this by the clerk from the Athens County Commissioners. Help me out. It's SJB Development Annexation.
Yes, this is for the Hampton.
This is the Hampton Inn. This is presented to council on 6/5, where it will lay for 60 days to be picked up again on 8/4. So the annexation petition is before us. That will be in council chambers for anyone wishing to review the area of annexation of about 13 1/3 acres for SJB Development, Inc. I'm also in receipt of a liquor permit transfer going to Neighborhood Hospitality, Inc., doing business as Applebee's. I believe this is a complete new liquor permit, a B permit. And it is not a transfer, but a new permit. And if we have no objections from council members, it will be available for anybody to review. And if somebody would like to raise an objection and possibly request a hearing, we can entertain that. Are there any other communications that anyone wishes to share before council? One other. I am in receipt of a fairly lengthy letter, so I will not read it, from Glenn Matlack of 35 Morris Avenue, going over many of the reasons that he feels that transferring Stroud's Run to the city would be a good idea. And that will also be within city council chambers for anyone that would like to review. Are there any other communications anyone would like to share? Any I've missed? Reports and communications from other elected officials. Law Director Hunter.
Mr. President, I would report tonight that we've received a notice to negotiate from the Service Workers Union, AFSCME, and that will occur during the summer. I think that contract expires early September, mid-September, something like that.
Okay. Mayor Abel.
Couple of notices the city has received. We received a letter from the Ohio Public Works Commission approving our State Issue 2 grant effective July 1 for repaving of Union Street from Schaefer to Jefferson. I think the amount of that was about $128,000. That project has already been bid as an alternate. That bid was good into late July. Our next steps are to get environmental clearance on it and then do the award and let that be done this fall. The second item I got was from the Ohio Department of Transportation, District 10, and it was a time schedule and an affirmation that they've allocated $530,000 toward bike path extension from near the Pepsi plant out to where the proposed Holzer is. They have also approved use of the limited access right-of-way in through the bridge overpass area, in that area and have asked for us for a first submission of plans by July 20. So that ordinance, I think, was just either through or finishing up tonight on the engineering. But so both those projects are well on their way, and it probably won't be construction on the bike path till next year. But we also have a request in through Clean Ohio funds that would help us with because ODOT will not pay any of the engineering costs. Clean Ohio can, and would also help pay some of the, I think 75% of the 20% we have to pay on construction. So we do have a grant request in for that. Hopefully to combine both of those, city expenses would be kept down to under $55,000 on the project. Any questions?
Thank you, Mike.
Could I ask a question, speaking of clean, on our clean committee, when they're going to report?
They had a meeting a week or so ago going over that. I can't really speak for them, being only a member of it, but they were going to run that through the Neighborhood Association Executive Committee because that's who created the committee in essence, and hopefully that will be within the next 30 days, we'd hope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Abel. City Auditor Kathy Hecht.
No report.
Ordinances for third reading. O5106, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 5 Public Utilities, Section 5.03, Water Regulations, Section 5.0301, Responsibility of Property Owners. Member Bain.
Mr. President, I move adoption of O5106.
Second.
O5106 comes at the recommendation of the Assistant Safety Service Director. It's probably something that we should have done a while ago. For a long time, we gave a lot of special service in the Utilities Billing Office that supported subordinating the utilities to tenants, and that's fine, but the problem is that it ended up costing time and effort for several months. And so to make a more efficient business-like office, because we have to run our utilities as proprietary funds, we're going to eliminate that potentiality of having a tenant sign on. The landlord can do whatever he or she wishes, but we're not going to be a part of it.
As you said, it was initiated by the Assistant Service Safety Director, but he was reacting to concerns from the employees in the utilities billing about the time that they were spending with it. So it wasn't something that we cooked up here.
No, and it's, the other thing I wrote down is the Ohio Revised Code sets the basis for operation, and we made really sure that we weren't required to do this, and we are not.
Other comments? Member Weil.
2 years ago, when we were looking at all the billing concerning utilities billing, you could actually see the rental list stand out. The coding of our billing at that time was such that you had an asterisk with a number behind it, depending on how many times the names changed. Actually, the billing changed. In many cases, you're up to 20 to 25 different changes, and this is over the period of a certain amount of time from our previous billing system. So a lot of time is taken just to change the names, put the things through, and just reschedule the thing. So this will save us some time in that sense.
Other comments? Member Patterson.
There are two things. One, just to reiterate what I said previously, to be sure that people understand this is the entire utilities bill, not just water. And the other thing, in talking to Ray Hazlett about this is another step towards putting more responsibility on the landlords instead of the city as a collection agency for the landlords. So it is their responsibility to chase them down these bills if they're not paid, not the city's.
Member Sands.
Can I just make a clarification? You said not just water, but the entire utilities, which includes the utilities for which we're responsible.
Right.
Garbage, sewer, and recycling.
And the EPA film.
And the EPA. We have nothing to do with
Gas,
Gas and electricity,
Or
that is
cable.
correct,
Right.
okay.
Good
The
clarification.
city utility bill.
Thank you.
Member Bain.
I neglected to mention that this will start in September when the probable leasing season begins for the following year. So we had to keep a time frame that's relatively long because of that. So the landlords will have a chance to figure out how to do this. I would also say that having a student on council, Sarah Sexton helped us, I think, to understand the kinds of things that happen in some of these situations. And I think that went a long way to convincing many of us that this had to happen.
Are there any other comments? Again, Member Patterson.
Just in reference to that, I had a call about an hour ago from Amy, and she said she was not able to be here tonight because of family obligations, but she said she was especially sorry not to be here to vote in support of this ordinance, that she feels it is very important for the students.
Are there any other comments? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 5106?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 5206, an ordinance vacating a 10-foot alley to the abutting property owner on Columbia Avenue. Member Bain.
Mr. President, move adoption of O 5206.
Second.
And Mr. President, O 5206 is rather than being cosmic, is rather unique. In 1902, this village of Athens subdivided a property at the edge of town into 3 separate parcels, and then the owner built a house on top of it. And to the chagrin of the current owner, there is a right-of-way that cuts right through the house, and asked us to vacate the right-of-way that didn't seem to exist anyway, only on the plat. And so we made the requirement that the owner will combine the 3 parcels plus the non-developed right-of-way. There are no laterals into a single lot, and the owners are delighted if we pass this.
Other comments? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 5206?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 5306, an ordinance amending ordinance O-13403, fringe benefits package for non-union personnel within the city of Athens. Member Sands.
Mr. President, I move adoption of ordinance 5306.
Second.
We talked for quite a while about this ordinance in committee several weeks ago. This comes to us from the Personnel Director's Office. This is a wage continuation plan that she recommends that we offer to the non-union employees. It is currently in the contract for the police personnel in the city. Comes to us actually from the recommendation of the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. It allows the city to actually pay the salary of employees who are injured and off work for at least 8 days, but no more than 12 weeks, rather than filing a claim against workers' compensation. Such claims actually cost the employer, which is the city in this case, for increased rates for up to 4 years. So this is actually a cost savings for the city, and it is a more flexible plan for the employees. They can use this leave time much more flexibly than they can through the workers' compensation program.
Other comments? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 5306?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 5506, an ordinance authorizing a service safety director to purchase 2 trucks for the street department. This was introduced by Member Flowers. I believe Member Patterson will be speaking to her ordinances tonight.
Mr. President, I move to adopt 5506.
Second.
This is an ordinance to purchase 2 trucks in the Streets Department. The total cost is $72,938. Council has descriptions of these trucks and why we need them. This was something that we took a look at when we went on the streets tour, and we're showing the trucks that are to be retired and kept for auction. The first one, truck 113, is primarily for sign installation and repairs. and it needs to be especially set up for that purpose. The previous truck is rusting, has high mileage, and the brakes are bad, and it's using a lot of oil. So other than that, it's really good. The other truck is 120, which is used to pick up and haul the grass and brush requests. It's also used for some other purposes as well. Tree removal, barricade transport, traffic barrel transport, and moving bricks when we need to do brick repair jobs. The retiring truck has high mileage, a poor engine, bad cab, rusting and rotting, and the transmission is going. So obviously, these two vehicles are also very costly in terms of maintenance right now, and so this is an ordinance to replace both of them.
Other comments? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 5506?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 5606, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into a contract for street paving, curbs, and sidewalks on Union Street between Schaefer and Jefferson, project number 24. Again, Member Patterson.
Mr. President, I move adoption of 5606.
Second.
This is the ordinance that the mayor alluded to, that we just got word today concerning grant funding of $128,000 of the job, and the total cost of the job, or the authorized expenditure is $312,000.
Other comments? All those in favor of adoption of ordinance 5606?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 5706, an ordinance closing portions of Court Street and Washington Street on Saturday, June 24th, and Friday, July 28th, and August 18th, 2006, for a cruise-in. Member Patterson.
Mr. President, I move adoption of 5706.
Second.
This is just the ordinance to close the street for the 3 cruise-ins, the dates that are in the title, and on the one that occurs on a Saturday, the street will be closed from 10 a.m. in the morning till 6 p.m. The evening ones are from 5 to 9, and parking will be banned during that time as well.
Other comments? All those in favor of 5706?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. Now ordinances for second reading. 5906, an ordinance authorizing an agreement with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Divisions of Park and Recreation for ownership of Stroud's Run. Member Patterson.
Mr. President, this evening I have several people here to speak to Stroud's Run, as was requested in previous meetings. So I think we will start with that. And is there someone who would like to go first? Paige would, and I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to council, if you are not aware, this is Paige Alost, our new Director of Tourism. Very excited to have her with us, and she graciously agreed to come and talk about what this means to her in her brand new job if we were to have the ownership and management of Stroud's Run. Thank you, Paige.
Actually, I began my duties with the Athens County CDB on July the 1st. However, this was such an important issue for us to talk with you about that I went ahead and put on my tourism hat a little bit early. And I got the big Stroud's Run Task Force file as well. That was one of the first things that I received. And of course, as many of us know, tourism is one of the fastest growing industries in Southeast Ohio. And clearly what we lack in financial resources, we make up for in natural resources and in the talent of the people that live in this area. And this is what makes Stroud's Run so incredibly important as a tourism draw for us, specifically in the city of Athens and of course for the entire county as well. Ecotourism, another one of the fastest growing segments in the international tourism industry, and of course right here in our backyard we have an opportunity to have another reason to draw people to the city and to the county. For us, Stroud's Run represents an unlimited opportunity for tourism. And of course, for the regular things that all of us may be doing from time to time out at Stroud's Run, hiking, biking, fishing, canoeing, kayaking. In fact, I'm getting ready to do a little bit of kayaking out there this coming weekend. But also for some things that we may be able to use that site for as additional programs within the city of Athens, like educational programs, adventure weekends, nature-related festivals, and other special events that we could draw to that site. And of course, if we don't have access to it, we can't use it. If we have access to it, we will use it. And of course, the other component of this is the economic development component. There are lots of tourism-related businesses, specifically those that are related to adventure and recreation, right here in Athens. And of course, during the summer months, when our student population is my time up. Is that what that is?
It's the first time I heard it.
When the student population is gone, we know that there's a little bit less money coming into the city of Athens. And a boost in this adventure and recreation business would allow some vendors to go out to Stroud's Run, food vendors, those that can provide additional equipment and resources, interpreters, guides, educators, instructors can all use that site. And of course, the thing that we're the most concerned about is if the city does not assume some operational leadership for Stroud's Run, what will happen to it? We know already that the state has cut the maintenance funding for Stroud's Run. They went from $300,000 to $150,000 in a blink of an eye. They have already said that the larger parks are going to get the attention. The smaller parks are going to get less funding. And of course, from a tourism standpoint, something that's not maintained becomes an eyesore in the eyes of a tourist. And of course, an eyesore can be associated with something that you don't want to see again and might even be perceived as something that's not safe. And you never know who's visiting Athens, and you never know what would drive them to come out to Stroud's Run. But we know that for people that do visit, who happen upon it now, they see it as this great little gem right here within the city of Athens. So definitely for us, we look at it as a great bonus for tourism, and we look forward to marketing it on our website and using the staff that's here. The website is already in place, the marketing efforts are already in place, the staff is already here. It would not cost anything additional to be able to market this site for additional tourism attractions. Okay.
Other
Thank you.
questions? Any questions from council for Paige? Doug?
I'll generate questions. Write a color copy for you. Who's good to talk? Thank you. I'm Doug Franklin. I'm the Assistant Dean for Recreation and Wellness at Ohio University, and I've been on the Stroud's Run Task Force now, I guess, about 2 years, I think half my life. A while back, I was asked to review the budget, do a 5-year budget plan. What you've seen is a revised edition of what I gave, I think, the last time I was here, about a month and a half, 2 months ago. I tried to get the ODNR existing budget. The problem is that they don't really have really good data. Much of what they're doing right now is absorbed into what's in Burr Oak. So really, what you have there are actual costs assessed to Stroud's Run. They're not accurate, but they're what they are. Notice that there is not a heck of a lot of revenue there. The next line down is the mayor's projection, and I believe that's the budget that he provided for the council. I got a copy of that from Kevin this morning. I put that in, and then my original 5-year plan is the next 5 columns. What I try to do in a 5-year plan, in any kind of budget assessment, is to look at things as conservatively as I can. You'll notice that when we're looking at campsite rental, it's 15% of capacity. That's actually a reduced number of sites, so it's even more of a conservative approach. If you'll look at the campsite for hunting rental season, when we know that we rent 100% of the campsites out, I looked at 80%. We know that I believe we can get more than 5% of the capacity of boat rentals. And so what I try to do is break down as many possible revenue streams and revenue sources as I possibly could. There's only 2 ways to balance a budget. You either generate the revenue or you offset the expenses, do some kind of cost containment. I've been doing budgets for 30 years at 2 universities. I know how to build a budget, and I pretty much how to project a budget, and this is what I consider a very conservative budget. To give you a comparison, the budget that I operate at the university is about $6 million. The budget that we operate in Bird Arena is about $250,000. The Aquatic Center is about $270,000. Our Outdoor Pursuits is about $250,000. This is a total budget of approximately $126,000. This is not a big budget. This is a very doable budget. Notice that compared to the mayor's, I'm generating more revenue and I'm also generating more expense. It takes money to make money. You have to have cost of goods if you want to sell something, so you have to generate more money. You have to buy more things to sell. It takes more people to make more money. And so what I've basically done is built a budget that I thought was fairly balanced. You'll notice on the bottom line there's a margin. You'll notice that, and again, ODNR's numbers are not accurate, so the negative 58%. Thank you very much for playing.
You can have a little bit of time to wrap up if you like that.
Thank you. You have to, the question has to be asked is, why does ODNR want to get rid of it? Well, my guess is that margin is probably not too far off. They're losing money. And consequently, the question is, well, how do we make more money? We just have more programs. We do more things. Notice that my margins are between 17% and they drop to 6%. 6% margin is not a heck of a lot of money. It's a pretty tightly balanced budget. If you go to page 2, it explains some of the things that we've talked about in the past. And it also talks about the repair and replacement and foundation account. I will not tell you we will have a $2 million foundation account to operate this park. I don't see how that's possible. I will tell you that you can put money into the park, you can expand or develop the park, develop certain aspects of the park, but you want to be careful that you don't overdevelop those aspects of the park. I'm here to answer any kind of questions that you have on the budget sheet. I can explain the color coding. I thought that would kind of highlight the key thing that the state didn't have that we do have is we have commitments from Ohio University of $50,000. The bottom line for the city of Athens in my budget is $27,000. So if you really want to get right down to brass tacks, to the bottom line, we're asking for $27,000 to operate a 2,600-acre park. I look at it as $27,000 for 2,600 acres. That's not too bad.
Questions for Mr. Franklin? Paul?
Yes, sir.
I noticed that you have further resource, second page, further resources available from ODNR funds. Is that assuming that they'll kick in some more money year in and year out?
No, sir. What that does is that takes the $49.5 from the ODNR and puts it into a repair and replacement account. What that does is that builds. So we take whatever profits that we have at the end of the year, we put that to that. We add 5% foundation revenue generation. If you put it in a CD today, you get 5%. You add those, you add the balance to what that 49.5, and that basically is incubator funds, it's startup funds. We're not asking for any more money from the state after this. But I felt it was better to do that than to squander it in expenses in the first year. Yes, ma'am.
Under the expense assumed growth,
Yes, ma'am.
wages and benefits and operational costs, it says under, I guess, maintenance seasonal, mayor's projection 26, and yours is 15.
Yes, ma'am.
So how does that, is that less maintenance? What is that?
It may be that he's loaded all his maintenance fees into 26,880.
Oh, I
You'll
see.
notice that I have.
Oh, you've broken yours out.
I have maintenance seasonal, I have maintenance off-season, I have some other things
Okay.
that my numbers are greater than his numbers. So when it comes down to the bottom line, I'm spending 55.7 more than he's spending
see.
on
Okay.
expenses, on
Okay.
wages and
And
benefits.
what's the kind of level of service? In other words, what kinds of services will be available out there under this, what I consider to be, kind of a bare bones? I'm assuming that we're doing kind of bare bones plan.
I think it is bare bones.
Yeah.
I think what you've got to do is you've got to kind of balance what that customer service is and the kind of
Yeah.
services that you're going to provide.
Right,
You need somebody there to rent a canoe.
right.
Somebody will be there to rent a canoe. If you want to rent canoes, if you want to rent shelters, there has to be somebody
Oh,
there
I
to
know,
take the money.
I know. What I'm saying is like, in general, is that 7 days a week? Is it 8 hours a day? What's the, as a,
My
community
numbers
member.
for seasonal help was 12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
okay,
That's the numbers I used.
okay,
Now, that's seasonal help. You're talking about high school kids, you're talking about college kids. You have a university that has a recreation management department. You have a community college that has a natural resource department. There is absolutely no reason why you couldn't go to those institutions, work out development deals with them to work on internships and practicums for students. It'll cut your costs, it'll give them the practical experience that they need, because that's what the field that they're going to go into.
yeah. Would
So
there
my
be a-
numbers
yeah.
might actually be inflated.
Okay, would there be a supervisor? I mean, frankly, I'm concerned that we have enough service in the park
Sure.
and enough management, in a sense.
You know, I guess you're asking a person that operates multi-million-dollar facilities with 500 students and 16 professional staff.
Right,
We firmly believe that, quite frankly, college students are very, very, very talented, and we work on a concept of student development. And so to think that you need a supervisor, who is that supervisor? It could be a college student, it could be an upper-level college student that's supervising entry-level college students or supervising high school. To tell you the truth, I used to run a park when I was in college. I also ran a beach when I was in high school. This is not, I hate to say, and I don't mean to demean recreation, this is not brain surgery. This is a doable budget based on the experience that I have. Again, 500 students working very, very, very well to operate our facilities, and that's talking about a $26 million ping center. There's 2 professional staff that run that building, and there's about 125 students.
Other comments for Mr. Franklin? Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
Magenta?
I have one more.
Yes, ma'am?
I think actually it was Paige that said this, that the state's budget for maintenance was $350,000 a year.
It went from 350,000 to 150,000,
Right,
and that budget is part of Baroque. And again, you
oh,
don't
in other
know.
words, it's Burr Oak and,
you-
okay, because I was going to
You don't know
say,
what portion of their maintenance budget goes towards Stroud's Run.
okay, that was my concern, because, if they couldn't maintain it on 150, and we're looking at far less, I was just wondering what the ramifications of that were. Is there any sense that it would be less maintained under our jurisdiction?
What we talked about on the task force was a directed approach to how you're going to maintain the park. Quite frankly, you can target areas that don't need to be maintained as well. I mean, quite frankly, there's some thought right now that we cut the grass too much, and that's what attracts the geese. If we let the grass grow up, then the geese might not be in there. There's a lot of different things that we need to look at. Clearly, the level of maintenance in the particular areas. We had a lot of discussion on whether we would have structured recreation, how much structured recreation versus how much natural area. I will tell you that the number one thing that we found in both qualitative and quantitative studies that we conducted was that the people of Athens are interested in the natural resource, the natural look of the park. And that came across loud and clear. And that was basically our vision and mission.
Member
Yes, sir.
Weil.
I see you have 2 sections in repair maintenance and material facility services. One's for, I think I'm reading it correctly, 2,000 for water testing, road patch, and signage. How is that different than repair and maintenance, the one above it at 7,000?
When I built the budget, you've got material city services and then maintenance contracts.
Repair and maintenance. The second
Repair
one
and
down from
maintenance.
supplies.
That could be repair and maintenance on the buildings, the house. Actually, the crew team built the dock out there now. So the question is, how much would we be willing to help them? All of the structures and those kind of things. It might be money that we give towards trail maintenance. The other things are city services that, quite frankly, is a reimbursement to city services. I didn't want to absorb that without giving it a number. I'm not necessarily sure that's a real accurate number, but it was the best I could come up with. But it's different than maintenance and repair.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin.
Yes, sir.
Other comments for council?
Hi, I'm Chris Ball, and I was a member of the task force. And Carol asked me to come tonight to talk briefly about the natural resources management aspect of what the task force has come up with. I think the key point right now is that the state has no natural resource management plan for this park. They've never had a natural resource management plan, and they will not have a natural resource management plan. Without a plan, you get problems. We have a geese problem. That's because of the kind of ad hoc mowing that goes on there, some of the other issues that go on there. And I think that with city governance of the park, we will have a much more direct impact on the protection and management of the natural resources that are there. People have voiced concern about the future management of the resources. With local control over those resources, I think that we will have a much better management. We'll be able to prioritize management, we will be able to plan better for management, we will be able to protect better for management than a state entity up in Columbus will do. Currently, legislation is floating around to have drilling for oil and gas in state parks. That's a possibility in Stroud's Run. If it's locally controlled, we would have local control over any sort of thing like that. We would have long-term protection over the natural resources are there. The park is a gem. It has a lot of really unique habitats. It has a lot of undisturbed habitat that's going to be more and more rare as more and more development comes down from Columbus because of development along the 33 corridor. And I think that local control and the local talent that's here in Athens will be able to manage it much better over a much longer period of time and much more sustainably than anything that we can get from the state here today or in the future, because it's just so low on their priority list. So I think that local control and the local talents that are here will ensure the sustainability and the protection much further into the future than anything that we would get from the state. So that's why I've worked so hard on the task force and stuff. And that's why it's enshrined in the vision statement that we had and the mission statement that we put forward through the task force. Our #1 priority is natural resource protection. So I'm more than happy to answer any questions. I got underneath 3 minutes. Ooh. So
We are trying to impose our 3-minute limit on people. Comments from council? Thank you, Christy.
Okay.
Other members?
We also have Kevin Swartzoff here, if anyone has questions for him. He said he doesn't have a prepared statement for you, but that if you have any questions that you wanted to bring forward to him, he's here and will come to the podium if you do. Going once.
Wait, I might have one. Let's see. I think I do. I was just wondering, in terms of the student management and the kind of the coordination between the city, your department, and, these student interns, I don't know. Have you worked with them before?
Currently, at the community center, in the parks, in the city pool, the majority of our part-time employees are either Howard University students or Athens City School students. We do a lot with work study, especially with our daycare programs. And I'd say any given quarter, we have 3 to 4 field work type students who work about 100 hours a quarter. But normally we have 1 intern also who work 40 hours a week for the entire 10 weeks. So we do have a good relationship with the High University and many of the colleges, including education, recreation. One of the things we will provide for the park is currently we do shelter rentals and those sorts of things just through the community center with our RecNet program. So things like shelter rentals and those really won't be paid for at Stroud's Run. Those will still be paid for at the community center. You can actually eventually be able to go online and pay for your shelter online or pay for whatever other fees might be out there. The campground actually is a self-registration, so you don't really have somebody at the campground per se. Currently, it's self-registration. We would continue that. There's a lockbox there. You actually go out, fill out the form, drop your money in the box. We'd have somebody check that on a daily basis. During the winter months, which would probably be December, January, February, we wouldn't necessarily have an employee out there. Our current staff would go out there and check for any kind of vandalism, check the restrooms, check the shelter houses, check garbage. We really wouldn't have somebody out there on an ongoing basis, similar to what Stroud's Run has now. They don't have somebody out there in the winter, but there's the activity in the winter like there is in the other 9 months out of the year. And we've kind of programmed our seasonal staff to start in March with a limited number, but as the season goes on in the spring, summer, early fall, we'd have more staff out there. But we would have a supervisor, and that supervisor would not be a full-time employee, though. We have those types of supervisors now. In fact, John Nous is one of our supervisors of our trail work. He uses primarily volunteers for all the things he does, but if you've been to our trails in the last couple of years, you can realize what somebody can do with a 20-hour a week on the job, and using students, using volunteer groups, the Athens Conservancy, and different other groups that help him. So even though there wouldn't be a full-time person there, we would have supervision at the park, directing students or directing other part-time people.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you each for coming this evening to add your comments to this. Mr. President, I move to table 5906.
Second.
We have a motion and second to table 5906. Discussion on tabling.
The reason for the tabling, and we're very sad that we need to take this step, but as the discussions went back and forth between the state and the city, some things came up that we could not agree to in the agreement. So at this point, it's tied up in legal language. The sort of the center of the conflict is that the state seems to be backpedaling a little bit in terms of wanting to retain some control over the management of the park, which doesn't seem acceptable to the mayor or to me or to our legal office. And the types of things that it centers around is the procedure that would occur if we were to return the property to the state, and exactly how that would take place and what happens to the $49,500. So that's one of the issues. Another issue that is more symbolic than it is substantive, it's that they have suggested that we had the directive that we must always keep the 10 horsepower boat power. It doesn't say 10 horsepower or less, it says 10 horsepower. And that seems arbitrary to us at this point. And the third thing has to do with charging for activities out there, and the language that they are suggesting was not acceptable to us at this time. So we're still going back and forth. I strongly hope that we will be able to bring this back off the table and resolve these issues soon. The state wanted it ended by July 1st, but it's their holdup that has caused the tabling. They understand that. And so that's where we are at this point.
Motion and a second to table ordinance 5906. Further discussion. All those in favor of tabling ordinance 5906?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been tabled. Ordinance 6006, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a cooperative agreement with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources Division of Wildlife for the management of Stroud's Run State Park. Again, Member Patterson.
Mr. President, I move to table 6006.
Second.
Basically the same reason, although the changes to this are very tiny, but we do want to keep the two ordinances together. And so it is logical to table this one as well.
Further discussion on tabling of ordinance 6006? Yes.
Most recent committee meeting discussion about this, there was some concern about the language being in this ordinance rather than the previous ordinance about oil and gas drilling and timbering. And there was some discussion about amending the ordinances to move that to the 5906.
Well, obviously, while we're fiddling around with it, that's in the discussion as well. But one of the things that's been suggested as well is that once we were to obtain the possession of the deeds, that we could write deed restrictions and pass those through council, and that would control what we do with the property.
I guess I just wanted noted that we still have to
Right.
have that discussion about possibly amending when they come off the table.
Right.
Member Bain?
Given the discussion and sort of last-minute nature of this, I hope it's not going to come off the table at third reading. Can I be assured of that?
It will not, because it will most likely be amended.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
That's almost guaranteed.
I mean, I
it will be
can't
amended.
understand why we went through all of this and then we table it.
Yeah.
Gosh.
It doesn't look like it does currently.
Right. I would say it definitely, both ordinances will be amended, but exactly the nature of those, we don't know right now.
Other comments? All those in favor of tabling of ordinance 6006?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been tabled. Ordinance 6106, an ordinance closing a portion of Court Street from Washington to State Street on Saturday, July 22nd, 06, from 7 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. for a family music festival, Boogie on the Bricks, and suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code Title 7, Chapter 7.05 Parking Regulations, Section 7.05.26B, 1, City Garage Metered Parking Rates and Regulations. 06206, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 29 Housing Regulations, Chapter 29.03 Rental Dwelling and Housing Permit, Section 29.03.07 Expirations and Renewals. Ordinance 6306, an ordinance amending Ordinance 10105, authorizing funds for engineering of a water line and pump station for the Columbus Road Water Project Number 218. 06406, an ordinance authorizing construction of the Columbus Road Water Line Project 218. Ordinance 6506, an ordinance authorizing construction of a gravity sewer, lift station, and force main for the Columbus Road Sewer Project Number 218. 06606, an ordinance amending the 2006 appropriation ordinance and the 2006 interfund transfer ordinance and declaring an emergency. On to ordinances for first reading. 06706, an ordinance amending Exhibit A of Ordinance 12605 to increase the staffing level in the police department. This is introduced by all members of council. Member Bain, will you speak to it?
Mr. President, 06706 returns the staffing in the police department to the levels that we had under the COPS Fast Grant Program. We are able to do this because we have had a relatively successful, a very successful collection, and also because we have funds that have come from positions that have been temporarily vacated as people have gone into the service. And one reason why it seems to me somewhat urgent to do this, we're going to have perhaps another person going off and doing duty for the National Guard that supports the rest of the Guard's activities in Iraq and other places. So therefore, we're back up. I'd like to point out that we were at 15 police officers and 6 lieutenants in 1989, and now we will be at 19 and 6. And so we'll be back up to what we were, and that was a positive increase, and the city will be well served by this. Future councils will have decisions to make on how to rearrange this, but as of right now, this is the best we can do.
Other comments on ordinance 67? Ordinance 6806, an ordinance accepting the petition for annexation of approximately 826 and a half acres located on State Route 682 and Armitage Road, known as University Estates. Member Phillips.
We're here finally. We get to begin reading this ordinance. We've had a lot of discussions about the University Estates project. The microphone's far away. Okay. So we've discussed this in several committee meetings. This is the ordinance that actually accepts the annexation. It has been released by the county commissioners. So this brings this land within the boundaries of the city. It's still, just to clarify for anybody who doesn't know, I mean, it's still privately owned land. It just will become part of the city. And it, not all of the project is platted. I think we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next ordinance, but we do have maps that are attached to the next ordinance. This is just simply the annexation.
Other comments from council members? Is there anyone from the audience wishing to speak to ordinance 6806? Mr. Aremus, you could give your name and your affiliation, please.
Thank you. I'm Rick Oremus, Athens attorney and local attorney for University Estates. And with me tonight is Michelle Noble. Michelle is from the firm of Thompson Hine in Columbus. And I want to thank you for this opportunity to make a few brief comments. President Bias, members of council, Mayor Abel, Auditor Hecht, and other guests present. We're here tonight to request that the city and University Estates enter into an agreement to toll the 120-day time limit for acting on our annexation petition or annexation petition ordinance in order to allow University Estates sufficient time to submit an application for a mixed-use planned unit development designation for the entire 830-acre project and to see that application through your process. University Estates believes it is imperative that the mixed-use PUD designation of the entire project be completed at one time. Otherwise, the expense and the time considerations for piecemeal PUDs are simply unacceptable. University Estates signed its development agreement with the city in 2000. University Estates' position is that the language, the spirit, and the intent of that agreement is that UE would be designated as one mixed-use PUD upon annexation into the city. Since that time, University Estates has expended significant sums of money to the point where today we have lots sold, we even have homes built, utilities have been installed, a water tower has been installed, streets, curbs, gutters, street lights, all in conformity with city requirements and in reliance on the language in the development agreement. My client is simply not willing to allow the annexation to proceed without being absolutely certain that University Estates is approved as a mixed-use PUD prior to final approval of the annexation ordinance. We are presently researching legal issues with regard to our right to withdraw the petition or in the alternative to enjoin this process. However, that is not our desire nor our wish to do that. We simply would hope you understand the gravity of this situation and how significant it is to University Estates and their future success. On their behalf, I would respectfully, along with Michelle, urge that you consider our request to agree to toll the 120-day time period for taking action and allow us to apply for a mixed-use PUD designation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aremus. Usually when we have lawyers speaking to council, I ask our lawyer to be the only one to reply. So Gary, if you wish to...
Well, I think University Estates has made a request tonight that Rick Aremus and Michelle Noble first informed me of just while the council meeting was going on here. My initial comment to the request to mutually agree to extend the 120 days was that I was not at all sure that could happen under the statute. It's my recollection the statute is very explicit in saying that council shall take action within 120 days or the annexation is deemed rejected. I'm not at all sure that you can take action locally to amend the state law and make it less restrictive, which is what you'd be doing in this case. I did tell them that if they made the request before council tonight that I would be willing to look at the situation and see what law is out there. It's going to be my guess that it's sort of a case of first impression, but we would, if council requests it, that my office would look at it and rule upon it. In any event, it would still take council's action to agree to an agreement if it were possible to extend the time. You still would have to do that. You most likely would have to take care of that by the expiration of the time of the 120 days, which is July 17th, I think it is. The issue of withdrawal of the annexation petition, I have already stated my position to University Estates on that I do not believe there is any law in Ohio that allows an annexation position to be withdrawn after it has been released by the county commissioners, which it has in this case, and that is my position on that issue.
And the only other thing I'd ask of council members at this point, and they may or may not wish to follow this, you will notice that there is a executive session at the end of the session that we have added pending litigation to, and since tonight possibility of pending litigation has been mentioned, I would ask council members to reserve their comments until they have the opportunity to have the benefit of counsel, our counsel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arenas. Thank you. Other comments? Okay. Debbie, you were introducing legislation. If there was more you wish to speak to that, that's fine. Okay. Ordinance 6906, an ordinance designating the zones for the annexation area located on State Route 682 and Armitage Road, known as University Estates. Member Phillips.
Okay, this ordinance is the actual zoning of the land that's being included in the annexation petition and ordinance. I have one slight change and one slight correction to the map that we're attaching. I want to go ahead and go over those right now. In the ordinance, where it refers to the map, I want it to also refer to the Planning Commission memo, which indicates that the zones will be reconciled with proposed but unplatted lots as the platting occurs. So after where it says is hereby zoned as designated on the map, I want to insert the words and in the Planning Commission memo attached here too, just to make sure that that's clearly part of this ordinance. And then I'd like to draw your attention to the map which is being attached. The recommendation from the Planning Commission came with a map that had the little circles and the zoning designations written on it. So we asked Ron Lucas to use GIS to actually shade those zoning designations in on a map. So we actually have that in a more readable format, and this is the map that will be attached to the ordinance. This reflects the recommendation that came through the Planning Commission. There was one slight error, and we will correct that. I've corrected it by pen here on, I think I showed it to people individually, but toward the left-hand side of the map, there's an R1 area, and one of the larger lots, the one that is to the south, is actually open space that has the little corridors that connects to the back of the individual lots there.
Right.
The other one is actually R1, as the shading indicates, but the handwritten circle on the map shows that that was open space, and we're just going to correct that on the map so that the map accurately reflects the Planning Commission's recommendation.
We'll
And I'll
have the
give this
minutes
hand-drawn
reflect.
one to the clerk.
We'll have the minutes reflect that that is the same as a typo.
Yeah. So I think that's, do we need to even though we're reading it for the first time. So I move to amend, to add the reference to the planning
You don't
commission.
need to,
Regarded-
it's a clerical change.
We'll
Okay.
regard it as a typo.
Well, in reference to the memo.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, the memo, oh, I'm sorry.
You're
you didn't
right,
need to-
you're right, you're
Okay.
right, you're right.
So I move to amend the ordinance to include the reference to the planning commission memo.
Second.
Other comments? All those in favor? Paul, on the amendment only.
I don't recall seeing the memo. Maybe I've lost it along the way. If you can get a chance, attach it to a new version of
Copy it
this,
for everyone.
as well as a color map, so we can see the nice colors instead. No, that you keep your color map. I just got black and white. Oh, thanks.
We'll see that you get a copy. Other comments on the amendment only? All those in favor of the amendment as read? As stated. Opposed? The ordinance has been amended and read for the first time. Paul, did you have other comment?
That was it.
Oh, 7006, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Athens, Ohio to enter into an agreement with the state of Ohio for an easement for a water main on land under the jurisdiction of Ohio University and declaring an emergency. Member Bain.
Mr. President, 07006 we discussed in committee meeting last time. Next time I'll ask to consider under suspension of the rules because we have a July 1 deadline. Notice that I believe this is already done, but here we are getting an easement to maintain water service fire safety loop on Continental property serving Walmart, Burger King, and Ruby Tuesdays. And I guess if they have water, maybe they can take care of those trees, huh? Okay.
Clerical change, the whereas is
I have been made aware of a clerical error on ordinance 7006. I'm sorry, what is it?
well, the whereas is on top of the.
Oh, well,
Wasn't
we
that just
shouldn't
a
do
typo?
that.
Yes.
Why is
Okay.
this a typo?
We will regard that as a typo. The law director will agree. Okay, other comments on ordinance 7006?
This is up here, it should be down there.
Oh,
Yes, Member Patterson.
I believe we have 2 more meetings before the 1st of July.
Oh, could we?
We scheduled a special session.
Remember, we changed it.
Okay. Well, then we'll be fine.
If you don't need it, you won't.
Yeah. I
You
thought it
do,
was
you
the
will.
12th.
Okay.
okay. When
Other
are
comments?
those? You'll let me know.
Ordinance 7106, an ordinance banning parking and closing that portion of Court Street from President to Carpenter on October 28th and 29th, 06, in anticipation of a large number of people converging on downtown Athens. What could they be talking about? It's Halloween. Member Patterson.
Mr. President, this is the first of 3 ordinances concerning Halloween. I did receive some word this evening that Frognet has set up a listserv that we'll be getting some information on to communicate with all the people who are working towards Halloween, and also that the group of students who were here previously have organized and are working feverishly on a proposal. Meanwhile, this ordinance is just like the previous years, just with the dates changed.
Other comments? Ordinance 7206, an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code Section 13.04.10, unnecessary noise in the downtown area on October 28th and 29th, 06, Halloween weekend. Again, Member Patterson.
Mr. President, this is Halloween /2, and the changes in this one from the previous years are the dates again, and also the change of the language to the timing, just saying during the time of the bandstand performances as requested by the code office.
Member Sands, comment?
I
No?
was just going to point that out.
Okay. Any other comments on 72? Ordinance 7306, an ordinance suspending the enforcement of Athens City Code Chapter 11.04, vending, peddling, and soliciting to allow vending in a designated area on October 28th and 29th, 06, Halloween weekend. Member Patterson.
Mr. President, this is Halloween /3, and there are no changes other than the dates.
Ordinance 74, Member Weil. Comment.
So, it's still going to cost us about 60,000 this year as well.
Right. And
Nothing's changed.
I certainly have not put out of my head, at least, the idea of 407, working towards a fence and working out the legalities of that possibility. I also got some information just within the last week of possibilities for getting the fencing much more expediently and cheaper. So that will still be a part of the ongoing discussion, but in the interest of time and what I was hearing from the departments is they were extremely nervous about trying to put something together of that nature by October. And so that is why I continued with these ordinances.
Member Bishop.
Okay. Did I hear you say that the students that were at the conversation are working on some kind of a proposal that would generate some income for the city?
Right. That is correct.
Yeah, great. Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Do you think we'll own Stroud's Run in time to put everybody out in Halloween there?
Maybe. Never can tell.
Don't think it will work.
Why not? We just give
Or
them maps on how to
fence
get
in
home.
Stroud's Run and make it a giant playpen.
Okay, gang. Any other comments on ordinance 73? Seeing none. Ordinance 7406, an ordinance closing a portion of East State Street on August 5th, 06 to accommodate farmers market and local artisans. Member Patterson.
Mr. President, this is an ordinance to accept an invitation by some of the retail businesses down in that area to move the market for a trial to see what kind of interest that might garner, and to add music and other activities to the day. And so we have agreed that we'd like to try it, and so this is an ordinance just to close the street over there, and Mill would be two-way. And the police have already been appraised to this, and they said they didn't see a problem.
Member Sands.
I see two separate dates here,
Yep,
August 6th and August 5th, and I don't have a
whichever
calendar.
one's the Sunday. Thought it was the
Good point.
6th.
Okay, let's write down
Which,
which is Sunday.
I'll go for whatever Sunday says, but I don't know.
I don't have a calendar. Oh, yes, I do. Hang on.
Maybe we will accept that also as a typo,
You go next week.
Yeah.
showing that the intention
August
is
6th.
for...
6th is the Sunday, so it should be
So the
6th.
6th is the second A is changed. So this was,
So clerk, we have two different dates there. They're enthralled in other things.
Sorry, what?
It should be August 6th.
6th.
Okay.
In both
We'll regard
places.
that as a typo. Other comments, Member Weil?
okay, so this is clear with both police and the fire, there's no problem?
Right.
Okay.
Anyone else? Ordinance 7506, an ordinance declaring a real and present emergency, thus obviating the formal bidding procedure for repairs at the municipal pool. Member Patterson,
Mr. President,
spending some real money here.
this is an ordinance to pay the bill for the emergency work that has been done on the pool. It had to be done on an emergency basis. The cost was approximately $35,000, and it is coming from the capital improvements rather than totally wiping out the recreation fund for the rest of the year. So that's basically it. They found a leak and were able to repair it, and the pool is open. Correct? The pool is open?
We're not declaring,
Well, actually, I'm supposed to be suspending, right? Mr. President, I move to suspend on 7505, sorry.
Second.
The reason for the suspension is the work is done, and they're waiting for their pay.
other comments? Doesn't quite cover the rules for suspending. but we'll
Well,
accept it.
except that it was an emergency situation that
Yes, it was, and it was presented to council as
Right.
such. Other comments on suspension of the rules only? All those in favor of suspending the rules on 07506?
Aye.
Those opposed? Rules have been suspended.
Mr. President, I move to adopt 7506.
There is an emergency clause on the
Second.
body of it. Motion and a second for all the reasons you've already stated, I would
Right.
guess. Any other comments? All those in favor of adoption of O7506?
Aye.
Opposed? The ordinance has been adopted. O7606, an ordinance amending the 2006 appropriation ordinance and the 2006 interfund transfer ordinance and declaring an emergency. What are you spending money on, Member Sands?
Yeah, I have it, Mr. President.
I knocked him off balance.
Yes, you
didn't
did.
My apologies.
I thought that interfund transfer was not there.
This is the ordinance.
Yeah, there's no interfund transfer, that's what.
The title,
No,
this is
knocked
the
me off.
ordinance.
the
Yeah.
ordinance, it doesn't have an interfund transfer on
It's
it.
an ordinance amendment.
It originally was going to, but
Okay,
Are we disheveled or what?
Change
yeah.
getting there.
My apologies to council members. The title that I read probably should not have had the interfund transfer ordinance on it, since
This
it's
is-
only the appropriation ordinance.
This is
so-
amending the appropriation ordinance. These are court funds, they're grant funds, actually, and we need to appropriate some money from about $34,500 to the Community Correction Act Grant Fund 235 Transaction Class 100, which allows salaries to be paid with this. Also, about $2,300 to the same Community Corrections Act Grant Fund, transaction classes 200 and 300, which are supplies and professional services in that same grant. And then it also would appropriate $7,000 to the Underage Drinkers Fund in transaction class 100, which is personnel again.
Other comments?
And again, we need to have this finished by the 1st of July,
But you're not moving for suspension
but not
tonight?
at this time.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, we're complete with ordinance. Announcements and other business.
Mr.
Member Bain.
Mr. President,
Oh, yeah.
on the 12th of May was mailed to us for consideration before the 12th of June, a request for a transfer of a liquor license that was permitted earlier. I would like to move to have us ask for an inquiry or a hearing on this, having a hearing in our county seat, as it turns out. My reasons for doing this are that we have very specific laws that require, when people come up with a proposal, that if they say they're going to be using a space for parking, given the parking situation in this town, that they use the space for parking. This liquor license includes a patio portion, so we're having two things occupying the same space. There is indeed a problem with that. Therefore, I'm going to ask that the transfer of the license from Brad Wharton, 7 West Carpenter to Bronings, be, that we request a hearing for that in our county seat. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to request a hearing for the transfer of the liquor license. Further discussion. Member Sands.
I agree with Councilmember Bain completely about the parking. Variance was granted for the parking should be there, the patio shouldn't be. However, this particular request, I don't think has anything to do with that, and it seems to me that the code office has taken action to deal with this two things existing in the same space question. And if it becomes a legal issue, then so be it, but I'm not sure that, well, I think it's being addressed, I guess is what I want to say,
Well,
period.
not to put too fine a point on it, but I do think that going back to the zoning board and asking them to eliminate the parking is not dealing with the problem. The problem is the liquor license that includes a patio component. And I know it, and it's also close to a church, and I don't know how that slipped by, but it just seems to me, and if I'm the only one voting for it, then I will have my say, and that's it. But the third ward rep has to do it. I mean, that's it. That noise is bouncing off the walls, off the wall of Third up there. And I think that it's very bad precedent to always be having these kind of oops things come up with respect to liquor licenses. Anyway, I've heard that should we ask this, they will just withdraw it. I mean,
Yeah, I think so.
that's what, so,
Withdraw.
of their request for the transfer.
Member Phillips.
Well, I also believe that the issue is about more than just the loss of the parking. I mean, the complaints that I've heard from citizens who live nearby is about noise. And so this is a request for a liquor permit that would include the patio, which is, a nuisance in the neighborhood.
And it may already be permitted, but, that's the whole argument. I think that's what was said, and I just think that's what we'd like. I'd like to go in and talk to them about what they do. Because they can preempt us to some extent, but certainly they can't preempt our zoning code and the zoning board of appeals.
Other comments? Member Sands.
I also heard and continue to hear the complaints about the noise, both electronic and voice noise in the neighborhood. And so that's why I brought up the issue of, can we change the noise ordinance to allow stricter enforcement? And I understand we're probably going to be talking about that in a soon-to-come committee meeting. So I'm not suggesting that
No.
I
didn't
want
mean
to
to
ignore
imply that,
that. I'm
Jim.
sorry.
Any other council members? Member Bishop.
I support the review of the liquor license. I think parking is such a problem, and to just, in a sense, allow people to do away with precious parking is a significant issue that we ought not to take lightly.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to request a hearing for the transfer of the liquor permit in question. All those in favor of requesting a hearing?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-1. Other business. Member Bain.
I don't know if it goes under city services, but we'd like to have a rehearing on the noise ordinance, a follow-up on that.
I
And
believe
then
that's where it came the first time around.
I know, that was expediency, though. I'll wait and see if anyone else is having a meeting next week. It's going to take a lot of time.
Other
I
committee
need
meetings?
both arts and rec and transportation.
Okay.
I want to announce that there's a public hearing on the University Estates annexation on the 12th at 7 o'clock. And I also probably need a committee meeting.
Okay.
Does that mean next week we can't start at 7? We'll have to start at 7:30?
We've got it publicly announced, starting at 7.
Okay.
It's been advertised.
So we could do noise first, and then I'll do city services in 2 weeks. Okay, because we may have a long session.
Others? Paul, anyone?
I probably won't be here for the next committee meeting. There's an item I'd like to put forward, though, but I'll put it through city services or something like that.
Yeah.
Or
yeah, there is
planning and
one more.
development.
If there is a change in garbage licensure, I'd like to propose that we reduce the number of licenses to cut down the number of heavy trucks rolling across our streets. So it'll be a small one. Oh, yeah. Okay. We'll wait and see what those guys come up with.
Okay. Member Sands.
Mr. President, I have a short Finance Committee meeting. The state auditors have asked us to come up with an ordinance and followed by a resolution to deal with some unclaimed funds some checks that haven't been claimed for quite a while, and we need to do that relatively quickly. The treasurer, Mary Ann McClure, would like to come and speak to us about that.
Is this
It
the
will be
unclaimed
short.
ones that have gone on for at least
Yeah, it
10
will be
years
short,
that I know of? Yeah.
but she has other commitments, and I'd like to sneak it in early if we can. I
About
promise
4:45.
it'll be short.
6:45?
6:45 is fine, or we could just sneak it in after the public hearing. I don't care.
Okay.
But she just has some other commitments.
I can go
A daughter
tomorrow.
leaving to go into the big wide world.
Been there, done
Any
that.
other
A
announcements? or
very
other business?
short communications committee meeting. And I do want to announce that there won't be a conversation with council next week. And that the next task is getting all the minutes from the conversations on the web, which I'll be working on.
Now that you're on vacation, all right?
Any other announcements?
Did we decide on 6:45 or 7 o'clock? Where are we?
It's up to you, Jim.
Do you want to just let it go first?
And then the hearing, and then go back to
Yeah, it
minutes?
won't, 6:45 would be great.
Okay.
Okay.
Open.
Auditor, is that okay?
Next item on our agenda is an opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services not covered on tonight's agenda. We wore them out. They're gone. There's nobody left to speak. They're sick of us. There's nobody watching on TV.
I wouldn't count on that.
Okay, seeing none, and seeing that the next item on our agenda is an executive session, do I have a motion to go in?
So moved, and add pending litigation to labor negotiations, please.
We will, and who would you like to be in that executive session?
The auditor, the mayor, the law director, and counsel.
I think we ought to be really mean and add the clerk. What do you think? Okay.
I need her help too much.
Okay. Member Weil?
Yes.
Bishop?
Yes.
Dane?
Yes.
Phillips?
Yes.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay. We will take 5 minutes only for any press to ask questions if they wish. Then we will go into executive
Good
session.
thing, although it was-
When we come out, we will only adjourn. Thank you.
Take it.